Hi everybody, Eric here with the Arcane table, and this is my one-shot from the Saskatoon X. Typically at events like this, we try to limit to about 2 hours, 20 minutes, half an hour tops, because that's the attention span of people at an event. They've got other things to do, they've got other places to go, there's other things that pop up, friends come by, they need to leave quickly. So something like a 4 or 5 hour one-shot doesn't always work. Here, you've got a part A, B, and C, a beginning, middle, of end, all within 2 hours, self-contained. And I'm going to share all my secrets that I've learned over the last 4 or 5 years of running a 2 hour one-shot with you. This is the Lost Tomb of Fenwick, the Ice Warden. Here we go. So typically, like I said, you only have 2 hours, so you have to get in and get out quick. And so I start the action usually right within the first 5 minutes. I don't have the players go and talk about their backstories. I don't have them start at the tavern. I don't have them kind of wandering and whatnot. We don't have time for that. We've only got 2 hours. I have a quick little, coaching session at the beginning saying, hey, you guys have been adventuring for some time. You're a team. Let's get through this together as a group. We only have 2 hours. We're here to have fun. Everybody work together. Let's get to the end. Typically, people are on board. And if there's somebody who's kind of off board, I'll just quickly have a quick talk with them saying, hey, this is not that kind of game. We need to get through it. Please follow along. So once that's established that we're all on the same team and that we're at the base of the mountain, we can see that we finally found the tomb door. I'll just have everybody choose one of these 6 cards. They're just kind of little condition cards. What could happen when an avalanche hits? Because that's what's happening. Push to the back of the map. Trees fall on you. You are unaffected by the avalanche. You are buried in the snow. You take 1d6 points of damage and you're pushed 15 feet in any direction. I let the player roleplay that. And then you've lost your equipment. This really hoops the player. If they're smart, they'll look for it once the encounter is done. But sometimes they don't think about it and they're going through the adventure having to rely on their teammates for equipment, which is a lot of fun. What I'll do is I'll fan them out. Everybody pick one. There you go. And then we'll roll for initiative. And then the avalanche hits. I'll ask everybody to read their card, and they'll read their card, and they'll place their character wherever it is. If a tree falls down, I have them move next to the tree, and I have the player topple the tree. And that way they're stuck under the tree. And then I'll roll initiative on the creature, and then the encounter starts. For something like this, once again, we're starting at level 3, so it's not going to be anything big. It's just more of kind of a taste, for newer players to get a feel how to read their character sheets, and something for experienced players to say, oh, I know those creatures, I know how to defeat them. Let's defeat them and move on. So once the avalanche is done, those that are kind of pulling themselves out of the avalanche can see the trees kind of shimmering in the light, from the sunlight. Start kind of raising, kind of forming from the snow. And it depends. If I have 5 players at the table, I'll have 4 or 5 Mephits. If there's only 2 or 3 players, I'll have 2 or 3. I'm just trying to show some of the younger players this is how D&D works, and I'm trying to burn some of those resources for the players, player characters, so that when they get to the end, it's a little more challenging. If there's only a couple players, like I said, I'll put a couple of Mephits. But if they're experienced players, what I'll do is I've got these undead zombie dwarf paper minis. I'll just simply put them underneath here. If anybody does a perception check, they'll see like there's a corpseified body built within the snow. The avalanche hits, they simply topple over. The zombies can get out, and then so we've got some flying creatures and we've got some slow lumbering creatures. It's a pretty quick encounter. I try to keep this to about 20-25 minutes with the intro included. And like I said, I try to include some variety. The Mephits, once again, they have the flying speed of 30. They're vulnerable to fire. Obviously, they're ice creatures. They have a frost breath, so they can kind of fly and hover, shoot their ray of frost, their frost breath, and they recharge on a d6. 6 on a d6. So it doesn't happen very often, but still gives them a fighting chance. And then, of course, they have their death first. So if you defeat it, it's within 5 feet of you. You have to do a con saving throw DC 10. If not, it bursts around you. You take 2d4 cold damage. Nothing serious, but at level 3, 8 damage can be quite a bit. The zombies, Nothing special here. Their speed is 20, so they're slow as heck. They just lumber around. Once again, they're just there to kind of take up resources, show the newer players how it's done. The only thing they really have going for them is their undead fortitude. If they get toppled, they're done, they're dead again. The DC 10 Constitution saving throw, if they succeed, they pop back up with 1 hit point. I only do that once per zombie, because then we got to get through this. If they keep on popping up, that's burning time. That gives them the opportunity to pop up once because they are undead, then knock them down again, done, we move on. If the rogue is in the party, I have just a quick little skill challenge check with a sleight of hands. Somebody can help, offering them advantage. And then 1, 2, 3, if they get 3 succeeds, they open up the door, they get in. If they get 3 fails, the door still opens, but there's an ice blast or cold blast that comes through. Anybody at the gate will take 2d6 cold damage, and then that allows them to enter. Once again, this is meant to be just an intro, a quick little flavor, a taster. It's not supposed to be an end game right off the beginning. These are very, very simple creatures to defeat, and it's just to burn some resources, get them comfortable, and then move them on to the next part. All right, our heroes made it through the first part. Once they're into the mountain proper, to this tomb, I have a little role play. Describe what you smell, describe what you see. How cold is it? It's eerie. Get any hairs rising on your arm. What can you sense? And once again, give the environment some flavor as they're kind of going deeper and deeper into this tomb, this mountain. After about 2 minutes of role playing, I go around the table, ask everybody. They enter on the far side of the room, and once they take a look, see, quite often everybody just sticks around there. So I don't even start anything. Okay, everybody can enter the room. Give me some checks. What would you like to do? I want to do a nature check. I want to do a perception check. I want to do investigation. Okay, you see the statue. You see, what's in these? There's something inside. If I use the zombies from the previous encounter encased in ice, they know what these are already. It's like, okay, let's keep away from there, or let's chop them out of the ice and kill them now, or defeat them now, or let's just leave them alone. If somebody does do a perception check, I set this pretty high because it's not a rock pillar; it's actually a roper. So they blend into the environment very, very easily, very, very well. So I'll set this at like a DC 20, DC 22, depending. And so if somebody manages to succeed on that, what I just say is that you see this rock suspiciously move, or you see like the lights from your torch catch it awkwardly, and you see something that was there that wasn't there 30 seconds ago. Once they enter the room, quite often they go to these right away and start investigating, or they'll go to the statue. The statue is a red herring. Obviously, it's there to attract the players to go and take a look-see at it. It's the Frost Warden of Fenwick, obviously, so they, that's the dwarf, let's go check it out. Maybe there's some loot, maybe that's the tomb. Of course, it's not just a statue. That's when the roper starts. Whether it's we roll for initiative in advance, everybody has already had their initiative, that's where we start. Typically, the roper, if it's not discovered, will start first. I've got its initiative already rolled in advance. It's pretty high. It's only happened once or twice in the 5, 6 times I've ran this. One of the players actually goes before the roper. But anyway, typically, a couple players will go here, a couple players will go here. The roper starts. It has its 2 tentacles. The tentacles have a reach of 60 feet, which is pretty much the perimeter of the room. So I'll roll, grab one, roll, grab the other, start reeling them in. I can reel them in at 30 feet per turn. The nice thing about that is that there are 2 acid pits here. Why would there be acid in a tomb? I don't know. Just because it's fun. And I'll reel them in. If I don't reel them all the way, they can topple over these ice blocks, revealing the zombies. Of course, now the zombies come out, and now we have more than just the roper in the room. I've had it before that the players will push or knock the zombies in the acid, and which is great because that's role playing. And then with the zombies die in acid, I don't have the zombies pop back with their undead fortitude. They're just done. They're dead. I've actually even had the party once put the roper in the acid, where they've just kind of gone behind, pushed it in, forced it in, and so they were all kind of around it, and this poor thing was in the acid bubbling away. It was a lot of fun. That one was quite inventive. It was a lot of fun. But typically, the roper reaches out, and latches onto one player, latches on the other, pulls them through the zombies, pulls them through the acid. The party loses their shit. they get scared. The plan they had is no longer valid, and they have to go to action. And so some of them will run across and help, chop up the tentacles. Others will just start laying on the roper. Others will take cover and start shooting arrows or their magic, from afar. Perfect. Spread them all out. Everybody has fun. Everybody gets a turn. Eventually, the zombies are done. Bang, bang, bang. Eventually, the roper is done. I've yet to kill any players, characters in the game. But in this encounter, at one time, I did run with 2 ropers, which was too long. I think it ran about 45, 50 minutes. This is only supposed to be 25, 30 minutes tops. The Avalanche was 25 minutes. This is supposed to be 25 minutes, allowing for an hour plus for the end boss. So now I just simply put some rubble here. It's there as an option if I wanted to run 2 ropers, and then I'll just have the 1 roper here, pulling player characters into the acid, into the ice block zombies. Once all the creatures are defeated, of course, we want to go and loot the zombies. Depending on how the party is doing, there might be some healing potions in there. That's important. That's helpful. It might be a +1 weapon, and typically, I don't say it's like something they're not going to use. If the rogue is in the party, he's using his rapier. Oh, you find a rapier +1. If the barbarian is in the party and he's using his battle axe, it's battle axe +1. Great. +1 isn't going to break this encounter, but the player that receives it sure does enjoy it. I've thrown like a scroll of magic missile in there before. That way, it's just you use it automatically hits. People like rolling d4s. They're fun. One time I ran this and it was only for 2 players, and they looted one of the zombies, and I didn't know what was in it, nor did they, and they just said, "What's in the backpack?" And I said, "I don't know, what's in the backpack?" And they thought about it, and they said it was a wand of fireballs. And I said, "Oh, sure, with 1 charge, with 1 charge, sure." And so, knowing that creatures in this tomb are vulnerable to fire, yeah, and I know what's coming in the next room with only 2 players, sure, that's going to help them big time. They used it. It took the creature down by half hit points, so those 2 actually had a fighting chance, and they defeated it. It was very cool. But typically, for loot, it depends on the party. I have a couple ideas in my mind. I have a couple of things written down on a piece of paper. I'll just throw them what they need. This is supposed to be fun. If they're struggling, give the team the resources they need to get through the next level. And that's this part. Round 3, fight. At this point, the party should be halfway spent in resources. There is really no short rest. There is no long rest. You have to push your party through the encounter. Once again, this is only a 2-hour session. They're throwaway characters. Everybody's here to have a good time and have fun. If somebody's out of spell slots, have a couple more spell slots. If that barbarian has raged out, you know what? You're super angry today. Have another rage on me. This is supposed to be fun. A lot of these players are sitting down for the first time, or a veteran. They've kind of been saving their resources to the end because they know how this works. You know what? Just use them. Have fun. We're gonna get through this, whether it's a total party kill or not. We're having fun. Ask, hey, you're having fun? Yep. Are you having fun? No. Why not? Because your resources are spent. Have some extra on me where it's not a problem. Happy birthday. Anyway, so on to the third part. Once again, we just finished the roper. So once they get down to this large chamber, just kind of give it some flavor. You can feel the open air, the wind. It's not as dank. It's almost got a freshness to it. That's because there's a big hole in the top of the mountain. That this creature, who's kind of had this dark presence over this mountain range for the longest time, has kind of made its dwellings, its nest. And that's the big twist, that this isn't a tomb. This is actually a nest of a wyvern. And it's been nesting here for the longest time, kind of keeping the tomb encased in ice. If not for this avalanche, it would always be entombed. And it's lived the last, whatever, how long, kind of in isolation in this tomb that nobody's been able to find. And so once the party comes in, give it some flavor. You could just explain, describe the vastness, how high the ceilings go, how the air is a little more fresh. You can feel the breeze, kind of coming in through this open, space, this open gap in the ceiling as the light, shining off the white, snow. It's almost blinding. At that point, you can have the party come in, have them come into the center of the room. Don't have them all lingering at the front. Once again, have them do their checks. Are there any zombies in the ice this time? No, or maybe, depending. If the party is killing it, they're doing really well, throw a couple more zombies in there, spice things up. I wouldn't put another roper because that's going to take longer. 2 or 3 zombies isn't going to be a big deal. Once they get up to halfway, they'll discover the tomb. This is the lost tomb of the Frost Warden Fenwick. His loot, his treasure, his legacy is all within that tomb. The party's going to want to get it. They can start climbing or they can start looking, stuff like that. Once they're settled, once they get in the middle, that open light source from the top becomes dark. This big shadow kind of looms over top as the cavern itself gets that much colder. That cold air, that cold, crisp air becomes dank, becomes dark. And you see these large bat-like wings, kind of blocking the light as these talons, these claws, kind of ripping through the ceiling and work their way down. And that, of course, is Frostbite the Wyvern. I have this base 3D printed. It's to represent flight. And then I've got the Frostbite, the Wyvern. He's in my, there you go, move so the camera can see me. There we go. So Frostbite works his way down. And once again, you want to give it some flavor. You want to say how menacing this creature is, the size. Once again, bringing the cold with him. And once again, everybody's already rolled for initiative. We roll for initiative once. We don't have time to roll 3 times for each 3 encounters. And then once again, whoever's going first is going first. I have Frostbite's initiative already rolled, saving me that much more time. And then plus, once again, I've ran this 5 or 6 times. I already know how this encounter is going to go as far as placement is concerned. I know, he's either going to go first or second or third, unless everybody rolls phenomenal and then he's going to go last, which shouldn't happen. He's the boss. Anyway, and so the encounter starts. Quite often, the good guys will hide behind the ice, the stake. Some of them will try to hide or position themselves at the base of this cliffside. That works too. But typically, this wyvern works its way down slowly from tier to tier to tier if need be. If he needs to fly again because he's in trouble, not a problem. Up you go. Anyway, I've had players, come up top, leap onto the wyvern, or I've had it once the wyvern gets down to the base, grab onto its talons or grab onto the wings. So once it flies again, they're already riding it like a bucking bronco, and that's a lot of fun. One of the monks actually, tamed it, and when the cavern closed in, and it was falling because of another earthquake, they rode it out the hole, which was kind of cool. I never planned it, but the party had fun and they did that. In a one shot, you can do that because it's supposed to be fun. Typically, the wyvern is protecting its nest. There's no eggs. This is just its home. All creatures have a lair, of some sort, and it's just protecting its home. Wyverns are quite dumb. They don't know any better. It's just a creature looking for a place to nest. The big thing about this wyvern that typically it doesn't have is I gave it a cold breath attack. It's a Constitution saving throw 12, and it does 2d8 cold damage, half on succeed, and it recharges on a 5/6. So typically what they'll do, like these ice blocks, are just the leftovers, the remnants of its ice blast. And so quite often players will hide behind it. It will just blast through them, it'll shatter them, and then if somebody gets within that blast zone and fails, they can just get encased in ice. And so what I'll do is I have an extra one, I'll line it up, and I'll shoot it. And if there's 2 characters, they just simply get encased in ice. It's a DC 10, to break your way out on your turn. And then players, can blast their fire at it and melt it and help them out, something like that. It's a cool, fun little mechanic. And once again, when somebody gets encased in ice, the plan changes. Everybody panics. They either try to get their teammate out or they try to take the wyvern down as quickly as possible. Once again, just adding that kind of environmental flavor to the encounter. I've had this wyvern slain. I've had it ridden out. I've had it chase the party out back through the roper as the mountain itself was falling down. It's like I said, I've done this 5 or 6 times now. each time it's ended differently. I think in a one shot like this, it's important to be flexible. You've only got 2 hours. This last part I've kind of timed to be an hour of that 2 hours. Half an hour for the avalanche, half an hour for the acid pit with the roper, an hour for this. Once again, if you see it's taking long, you can reduce the hit points. You can, fudge its AC a little bit. Not a problem. This is supposed to be fun. If the party is failing, once again, rely on those magic items that you gave them. Don't forget you have some healing. Don't forget you have that magic missile. Don't forget you have that wand with the fireball in it. Oh, very cool. It's vulnerable to fire. Fireballs are what? 8d6? So you can one shot this thing with a fireball if it's placed correctly. If it fails, it's safe. Um, anyway, once this is done, they can go and they can loot the tomb. It's just for flavor. It's just a MacGuffin. There's really nothing in there. The one time the party was in trouble and the barbarian came up here and looted it, and so it was like, okay, I knew the barbarian was using it as a great axe, and I just gave it some flavor. Like this is supposed to be a warden. He's supposed to have his weapon. He's a dwarf. The barbarian was a dwarf, and so it was just another warhammer that could set on fire. And so I just took his weapon, which was 1d12, I believe. And then, as he picked it up, you could feel the warmth, like the rage, kind of boiling within his blood. And then he was able to dual wield these two warhammers. One was on fire and one was just straight up bludgeoning. And it was awesome. So he ran, he jumped onto the Wyvern, and he beat the snot out of it, saving the party. And that player was the hero. But this is supposed to be fun. This is supposed to be 2 hours. It's supposed to be flexible. You can always tell who's having fun and who's not. So if somebody's not having fun, just quickly say, hey, what's going on? And then change a little bit. I ran out of resources. Not today, you didn't. You have another couple spell slots. You're back into the action. That's the way I see 2 hour one shots. Once again, you don't know who you're playing with. You want everybody to have fun. If this is somebody's first time, tell them this typically isn't the way it works, but for you, buddy, today it is. And then they'll have a lot of fun and they'll see that big smile on their face when they leave the table. If you're running a 2 hour one shot or 3 hour one shot, I also feel it's important once the game is done to talk to your players and ask what everybody thought. Hey, that was really cool. That was kind of difficult. Oh, I really like this. This could have been better. And that way you can go back and you can tweak. Quite often at a convention, I'll run this 4 or 5 times, in the 2 3 days. And so after 2 or 3 times, you can really trim the fat. You can take out that second roper. You can take out a couple zombies. You can make this guy a little more powerful. Originally, I only had him charge his frost weapon on a 6 and on a d6. He was getting taken down a little too easy. I recharged it on a 5 and a 6, giving the Wyvern a little more of a fighting chance. I found that would kind of balance the playing field, so now I keep it in. Now that I've done this 5 or 6 times, I have that 2 hour one shot amongst many others that I can just throw into that grab bag of mine. I can pull this out whenever I need it. That's it. It was kind of fun. It gives some commentary on it and kind of include you in. If you have any questions, please ask. Don't be afraid to ask questions on what you would do or how it could be better. If there's some of the terrain you saw that you liked, don't be afraid to ask. I know this is all easy stuff for the most part. Once again, dollar store. If somebody's interested, I'll show you how it's made. I encourage you to write a 2 hour one shot, even if it's just for your home group, or if you decide to do a convention, speak with the powers that be, get in there, try something different. If you're a DM, challenge yourself. A 2 hour one shot can be challenging, especially if you've never done it before. Anybody can run a 4 or 5 hour, game at home for your players, people you're comfortable with. Not everybody can run a 2 hour or 3 hour one shot for strangers in an environment where it's loud and there's a lot going on. If you want to challenge yourself, please do so. I'm a stronger DM because I do this. Please like, subscribe, and comment. We are currently at 95 subscribers. Let's get to 100 by the end of the month. We've got 5 more to go. My name is Eric. This is the Arcane Table. And remember, you're always welcome at the table. Now I've got a little 3D printed pedestal, and I've got this fig that I just kind of put a base on. Exactly.